So the recording for today's idea exchange will be posted on the Percolator webpage in about a week in the meeting archive section. So those who are not able to be here or want to revisit any parts of the meeting, you'll be able to do that. So a little housekeeping to start. We are going to begin, as always, with some announcements. And there are 3 people who had requested in advance to make announcements, and there's also time for those of you who want to hear something that was not planned in advance. That's completely fine. And so these would be announcements
I'm a
that
little scared.
I'm actually going to just mute everybody. There we go. There we go. Announcements of anything of general interest to the network, a resource or an idea, and I just ask that you keep it really brief. Today's main topic is continuing to learn about hybrid approaches to delivering memory cafes, and we are very fortunate that we're going to get to hear about a simultaneous type of hybrid where there are people in the room and on Zoom at once, and also sequential, where the cafe gatherings alternate between in-person and virtual. And I think, many of us are pondering these kinds of ideas, and it's really going to be valuable to get to have a sense of how it's actually working for those who have tried it. The second part of the meeting, we're going to talk about the recent Percolator survey, which was about taking stock, really stepping back after many years. We started in 2014 and sort of grew organically without really a specific plan. And so it's really high time to hear from you what's helpful, what would you like to see us do differently, and really brainstorm together. So we'll look at the results of that survey and also just hear from those of you who are here today about your ideas. I saved a little time at the end so that if there are other topics that folks want to just kick around while you've got other Memory Cafe people in the Zoom room, you can do that. And then we'll be back next quarter on June 8th. We always alternate between Wednesdays and Thursdays because some folks have their cafe on one day or the other, and that way more people get to participate. So we'll be here on Wednesday, June 8th, same time, 1:30 to 3:30 Eastern. So the meeting is being recorded, as you know, and it will be available on the Percolator webpage in the archives. It's wonderful if you feel comfortable activating your video and if you have the bandwidth to do so, just because it makes us feel like more of a community. And I think that's always been a big part of how the Percolator functions, is supporting one another in doing the work that we do. So it's wonderful to see your faces if you are able to do that. And for those who just joined, I'll just say something that I said at the beginning again, which is if you are eating your lunch, or if you have a messy house, or if you have pets, toddlers, etc. in the room, that's all great. The messier, the better, is the way I look at it. It makes us all feel better. So please don't hesitate to come on camera for one of those reasons. Please do keep your audio muted unless you're speaking to cut down on background noise. And at any point, please feel free to use the chat box or the raise hand function to share your questions and comments. The goal is always to have a nice exchange and conversation here. So some of you have already done this, but if you haven't, please say hello. Please type your name and location into the chat box so that everybody can get a sense of who's here. Feel free to include an organizational affiliation if you like, if you have one. It's wonderful to see people from far-flung parts of the country. It's great. Oh, and I see Glenda had her first Memory Cafe gathering today in Mankato, Minnesota. So that is truly exciting. Congratulations to you and your team, Glenda. That's really, really great. So we have folks from all over the place, as you can see in the chat, and we're so glad that you're all here. It's wonderful. Okay, so keep that coming. I'm going to go over a quick couple of Percolator updates. For those of you who are in Massachusetts, the Percolator maintains a directory just of Massachusetts cafes. And I always want to remind Massachusetts folks, please check your listing, see if it's up to date. And if it's not, you can email me or you can fill out the new cafe submission form, which is at the bottom of that directory page. The friendly URL is right up here, jfcsboston.org/memory cafe directory. This is especially important now because we know that cafes have been going through tremendous transition over the past 2 years. And so a lot of people have needed to make changes and then make changes again. And we don't mind making changes again and again. We really want it up to date so that when members of the public or providers refer somebody, they're going to get accurate information. So please do check your listing. Thank you. And then also just a reminder to everybody that all Percolator resources are free and can be found on our webpage there. And we're actually going to be sort of talking through this list of resources later, so I won't go into it, but don't forget to visit us and check out what's there. So now I want to open it up for those who had brought updates, and we have 3 people planning to give updates. Dave Widerick talking about Dementia Map, and then Andrew Morton from Time Slips, and Beth Baker from Dementia Action Alliance. And then I'm going to allow a few minutes if anybody else wants to give an update. So Dave, let's start with you. Here's your slide, and if you want to go ahead and unmute yourself and begin, that'd be great.
Thank you, Beth. It's great to be with everyone. I appreciate this opportunity for an update. Very quickly, as an introduction, in addition to Dementia Map, which I'll share with you, I've been working very closely with Beth for several years, many years, coordinating the good work that she's doing there in Massachusetts with Memory Cafe Directory, which is my global directory, far outside of Massachusetts. And so we've been working very hard to keep those listings in sync and Memory Cafe directory. And I'm happy to see so many people, not just part of Massachusetts, but outside. If you have your Memory Cafe listed with Memory Cafe directory, wonderful. If you don't, please visit and make sure you get it listed. This is a free service that I provide, and I would love to get you listed in Memory Cafe directory. And Beth is right, there's many updates that take place, and I love getting them. I'm a little behind, I'm working on them, but it's good to keep the information up to date, and please submit that. But today,
can I just give you a little editorial comment there before you move on, Dave? I just want to thank you so much. I don't know if everybody realizes that the National Directory is run by Dave, memorycafedirectory.com. And when the pandemic began, he created a separate page, Cafe Connect, for virtual cafes, which is set up like a calendar. And I think I share those directories with people, 7 to 10 times a week at least. And then I also send the information out as part of all my mailings to my Memory Cafe guests. And I know that others also completely rely on these resources. This is a huge undertaking. So I just really want to thank you, Dave, for that.
Well,
and now back to you.
I appreciate the kind words. It has really grown. It's well over 1,000 listings in 5 countries. And the Cafe Connect that you mentioned, I think now has nearly 200 virtual cafes. And frankly, it's nice to see those hybrid ones that we'll be talking about later, because there's a number of them now that are identified as hybrid. So if yours is a hybrid and I don't have it identified as such, please drop me a note, get in touch via the website, and let's get your listing shown the way you want it shown, and get that up to date. So thank you for that. I appreciate the kind words. Well, Dementia Map is something that has kind of come out of the Memory Cafe directory world. I started this with Lori LeBay of Alzheimer's Speaks. You may have heard her radio show or visited her website or listened to her speak at events when we had those. And this is something that she had in her mind for many years. Her mother lived with dementia for 30 years, and it was a vision of hers. So we collaborated on this, and it's been active for about a year and a half now. What Dementia Map is a global resource directory, where Memory Cafe directory is just memory cafes. This is intended to be a directory for all things dementia. And what we want is to be able to provide resources that you may not necessarily know about. And Lori has a great saying, you can't know what you don't know. So everything we're doing here is trying to help everyone discover resources that you may not be aware. The search methods will start kind of on the left there. Very easy to search, whether it's a simple text-based search like you would in Google. It'll find whatever text string you enter. We have you can see the map there as well. The blue dots continue to grow. We have over 150 different categories of resources, and those main activities or main groupings that you see there: activity, education, housing, media, products, support services, and a growing business to business section where service providers support other service providers. Uh, there's really something for everyone. So my advice would be, if you'd like to go exploring, carve out some time, because you'll be spending some time exploring a lot of the different resources. When you search for something, it's very simple. We display what we call resource directory cards. These are just like business card looking images that allow you to see what's in that category. A simple click on the card and you go to a very extensive profile for that resource with contact information, social media outlets, whatever they want to share, and allows you to get directly connected to them. We don't play any kind of referral game or collect your email or any of that. We just simply provide the resource, you connect with them, and we just get out of the way, basically. Now up at the top, you can see the featured resources. Again, trying to help people discover resources they may not be aware of. Up in the header, and then over on the sidebar on the right, and then down in the footer, we display these images that are members of the Dementia Map community. You of course recognize Teepa. She's a member of the community as well. But we want to bring visibility to these resources. We don't display Google ads or anything like that, but these are the resources that are part of the community, and so we're doing our best to make them visible, to expand their visibility. Of course, that helps them, but it also allows people to discover resources that they may not have known about. The other areas of the site, we have an events calendar. People like to acquire information in different ways. And until recently, the events have all been virtual, but we're fortunately starting to see a few in-person events. But the calendar allows you to simply browse, hover over an event, it'll pop up an image and some description, and you can dig in to see if that's an event that you might have an interest. And on the right there, we do display upcoming events in the sidebar. The next 5 that are about to occur appear in the sidebar, so you're always up to date on what's coming. And then the blog, we're growing information from our members as the subject matter experts, sharing all sorts of information from their perspectives, and that becomes yet another way for people to discover information and be able to dig deeper and get more information. New to Dementia Map, not even on this chart yet, is a glossary. We've added a glossary of terms, and I've been very careful to make these simple, direct, 3-sentence definitions of the terms. We're adding to them all the time. We're now starting to get blog posts that expand on these terms, and so that if you go through the directory, or sorry, you go through the glossary, find a term that answers your question, you're now starting to see some links to blog posts that go into much deeper detail of that particular topic. So again, it's yet another way to find resources and information that could be helpful. We're growing every day. We welcome businesses, companies that provide products and services. We offer free plans because everybody's welcome. If you've got something of value, everybody's welcome. But we do offer paid plans that allow much more visibility, active promotion, social media shout outs, and so forth. So it's something for everyone, both the providers and those seeking information.
Thanks so much, Dave, for sharing that resource with us.
Thank you. I
Really
appreciate the opportunity.
appreciate knowing about that. So I'm going to actually go back, and we have Andrew and then Beth, who are planning to share, and Gail, I got your note that you would like to make an update too. And if I could just ask everyone to really keep it to 1 to at the most 2 minutes would be great. Andrew, are you here with us? Do you want to unmute?
Yes. Can you hear me okay?
Yes. Now, did you want to share your screen?
If I can, that would be great.
Sure. I will make you a
Thank you so much.
co-host. Okay, you should be all set.
All right. Well, thank you so much for having me today, Beth. And it's great to see a lot of familiar faces and names on the screen. For those of you who I don't know, my name is Andrew Morton, and I work for Timeslips. And we are a national nonprofit that promotes creative engagement as a way to engage and improve communication with people that might be living with memory loss. But our techniques are very diverse and can be used in many different contexts as well. And the main reason I wanted to join today was that many of you who do know our organization may know that we recently did a massive sort of overhaul of our website, and at the same time have launched a new membership model for different ways to sort of become more actively involved in the Timeslips network. But as my personal responsibility at Timeslips is to kind of support the promotion and development of our resources for family caregivers. My main goal to come here today was to confirm for anyone that may be concerned that we still have many resources available for free on our website. But we understand that in the changes of our website from what it used to look like, it may be a little hard to find exactly where that information is. So real quick, I just want to let people know that if you were to visit our website, timeslips.org, to learn more about our organization, to access our free resources for family caregivers and friends, you would go to the trainings option here, click on the individual training, and then we'll take you to a page there for caregivers and families. So very quickly, to give you a brief overview, if you don't know about the resources that we offer for caregivers and families, you can watch the little video here on your own time later on if you would like. But essentially, we have 3 programs. We have one program called our Engagement Party program, where if you are interested in sharing Timeslips with others, whether that's members of your own family or professional networks or people connected to a memory cafe, you can download resources on our website to host your own engagement party. We provide an instructor guide and a guest handout for you to do that. We very intentionally call these engagement parties because we want these to be joyful gatherings. And as you know, I know things are starting to change, and if you do feel comfortable having small in-person gatherings, I hope that you might find our resources a great way to kind of share our evidence-based techniques for memory loss with other people. So you can learn more about the engagement program, engagement party program there. We also have a free online training for Timeslips for friends and family, which takes about 45 minutes to complete. And you can access that on our website at any time for free, as long as you have a free membership with our website. If you don't have that, there is a link to do that, to sign up for free there. And if you click on that, it will take you to our new form there just to fill out a few basic informations there. I want to confirm that there's no cost to sign up for the basic membership level there. And with that, you get access to our monthly newsletter, access to our creativity center, where you can see the kind of various prompts that we use to have creative conversations with people that may or may not be living with memory loss. And so once you sign up, you can then access all those resources absolutely free of charge. I'm going to go back one more page real quick to show you that on that same page, there's also additional information about other membership levels, which I'm not going to talk about in detail now, but you can read more about that there if you like. And also you can scroll down and learn a little bit more about some of the other programs I mentioned, Engagement Party and our Imagination Kits, which I know many of you are familiar with, which is a great resource, which is essentially Timeslips in a box, and is a great resource for memory cafes and many other programs like that. So I'll stop sharing my screen now, and I'll drop a couple of those links directly into the chat, so that if you want to look at a website in more detail, or if you'd like to sign up for a free membership, you can do so, and then you can access those resources at any time. So thank you so much, Beth.
Great, thank you, Andrew. That's really helpful. A lot of memory cafes use Timeslips resources. I know that I use in the Creativity Center, I use the beautiful questions at our cafe every month, and we use the database of photos for storytelling as a group a lot of times. And I know many cafes use many of your resources, so really good to know how to continue to access them. So Beth Baker, are you with us? Do you want to unmute? Okay, go right ahead.
I'll be very quick. Thank you for letting me come. I'm with the Dementia Action Alliance, and we're doing a manual it's going to be a big manual, pretty comprehensive for folks who are living with dementia and their care partners. And we're trying to feature their voices very prominently in the manual. We want it to be really representative of our country and the people living here. So we're particularly looking for folks from Asian American communities and Hispanic Latino communities. We just need a few voices from those communities to round out who we already have. And I would need to interview these folks ideally by early April. So I'm going to put in the chat my contact information. And if anybody comes to mind who you work with, I would be very grateful. I had a little blur, but I can't seem to get
Well,
it.
you can, Beth, you can take your time and do that in a moment. So no need to feel like you have to multitask.
Well, that's pretty much all I had to say. We hope you'll want to use the manual when it comes out later this year. And thank you for your help very much.
Thanks, Beth. Dementia Action Alliance is really distinguished by its work to be guided by people living with dementia. And for those of you who are with us for our December quarterly idea exchange, we did that one in partnership with Dementia Action Alliance to really focus on how memory cafes can be have more meaningful opportunities for leadership among our guests living with dementia. And we're going to continue working together with Dementia Action Alliance to provide more guidance to the cafe network on that. So thank you for that. Let's see, Gail Snyder, I think you had a quick update.
Yes, and can I share my screen real quick?
Yes, you can. And then I'm just going to say, because I got a message from Janet, and I'm not sure if anybody else was asking, I think what we'll do at this point is we'll move on in the agenda, and then we'll come back at the end in the time that we have at the end for additional announcements. So let me go ahead, Gail, and give you that permission. And you'll be the last announcement for now, but then we'll come back later. And by the way, if folks have announcements they want to make, if you want to go ahead and put a note in the chat to me, just so I have an idea and I can sort of think about our time today, that'd be great.
Okay, so real quickly, for those of you who may not have been here when I presented about Dementia Friendly Fort Worth's program, I guess it's been over a year ago. In mid-January, we launched 2 additional programs. One of them is a second time slot of our original activities for people living at home with dementia. So it's also offered at 1:30 in the afternoon now. We also offered a brand new program, and I'm showing you from our webpage. There's a tag for our new program 2022. And the new program is called Let's Get Together, a social club for seniors. And this program is designed for those people who are at risk or who are in denial and would not attend something that says dementia, but they need socialization. They need activities to help delay or prevent the onset of dementia. And this program is outcome-based. So we will be gathering some data from the participants in order to show the improvement in loneliness and depression. And on our website, there is a link to make an agency referral. So if you see right here, it says agency referral form. Anybody can make a referral. And please, agencies. And then also here is the link to connect directly to the program and to register. And you only have to register one time. And the Let's Get Together program is at 11:30 Monday through Friday. And anyone from any geographic area can You don't have to be in Fort Worth or even in Texas. So we welcome you to refer your participants to the programs. Thanks, Beth.
Great. Thank you so much, Gail. It's really great to know about this approach. It's definitely addressing a question that has come up in today's meeting and is always a perennial question here, which is how do we serve people who feel uncomfortable with the term memory cafe, let alone the term dementia or a disease category. So we'll look forward to hearing an update from you as that program is implemented and learning more about how that works. So thank you, everybody, for those updates, and we will come back to have some time for updates at the end for those who might think of something that they want to share. Janet, thank you for putting in the chat. Janet offers a really unique resource that memory cafes could tap into. She recently joined our Percolator guest artist activity facilitator directory, and I see her on screen in costume, which is fantastic. And in the chat, she's describing the historical portrayals that she can do at your memory cafe. So now let's, thanks, Janet. So let's talk about hybrid cafes. And just by way of context, one of the perhaps surprises that's come out of the last 2 difficult years is that some of our guests do better, prefer, in some cases can only attend virtual cafes. So that could be people who lack transportation or have a lot of mobility difficulties. It could be for individuals or families where getting out of the house is just really difficult. I know in our cafe we had a guest who's home on hospice who was able to join again when we went virtual. And also sometimes there are family members from different locations or friends from different locations who meet up at the cafe and are not in driving distance. They could be located very far apart. So these are all reasons why virtual cafes can be really the best thing for some of our guests. But meanwhile, some of our guests can't go online at all for one reason or another, lack of broadband hardware or comfort with it, or it's just disengaging, does not work for them. We know that we also have many guests who are just so eager to be back in person because they really prefer that. So many of us are trying to figure out how do we really optimally serve both groups of people, and that's where hybrid comes in. And before I introduce our first presenters, I want to just set the table a little bit and say we're going to be talking about 2 kinds of hybrid today. One is simultaneous and the other is sequential. I borrowed this photo here from James and Lori in Michigan, and this shows you a simultaneous situation where there's a group of participants on a virtual platform and a group in the room at the same time. And then sequential would be where some of your gatherings are entirely virtual and some are entirely in person. So I'm looking forward to hearing about both. And I'd like to introduce Lori Venable. And Lori, do you know if James was able to be here in the end?
At the last minute, he said, you better go with the recording.
Okay. Yeah, I wasn't sure if there was a change. So Lori, we're delighted that you're here live to chat with us, and your colleague James had a family medical emergency and he recorded his presentation. So I'm going to play it for you, and then Lori's going to help to field questions at the end. And I'm very grateful to you both, especially the extra effort involved in recording this. I previewed it earlier and it's excellent. And James is going to really go into a lot of the operational details that I think we're all curious about. So we're going to be hearing about the Come As You Are Memory Making Cafe, and I'm going to go ahead. Actually, I think I forgot to share computer audio, so I'm going to just reshare. And we'll go ahead and get that started.
Good afternoon, and thank you
If someone can give me a thumbs up if you
for
can hear,
inviting my
okay?
colleague
Perfect.
Lori Venable and I to speak with you today. And thank all of you for all of the hard work that you do in your communities. Our monthly cafe has been running since September 2020. It's an all-volunteer run, joint operation of a small church called Holy Faith, a nonprofit senior care outfit, EHM Senior Solutions, and a nonprofit called Dementia Friendly Celine. And the town where we are based, Saline, Michigan, is a small town, about 8,000 people or so. We're 10 miles south of Ann Arbor, a big university town in southeast Michigan, about 40 miles west of Detroit. We get about 24 in-person attendees, and they tend to be a mix of city, suburban, and rural residents, roughly equally. The Zoom option that we have offered for the last year brings in some local folks who just find it easier to attend by Zoom, but also now folks from all over Michigan. And we've also had folks join us from Iowa, Georgia, and California. In fact, we have a small grant specifically to enable this hybrid format. Let me show you how our place is laid out. We run the cafe in the church's black box type social hall. It's a simple, unobstructed 35 by 40 foot rectangular room. We have movable, foldable tables. We have some rectangular ones. We have some round ones. We also have a movable upright piano. We can configure the whole space any way we want, as long as we put it back the way we found it. Even sometimes reconfiguring things even during the course of the event. Let me tell you about how we lay things out. We pretty much lay out the equipment the same way each time. At the far end of the hall, we position a great big 75-inch TV. On a small folding table near the TV is a laptop to run the Zoom. And a goofy looking person running the laptop. That would be me. There's a webcam on top of the TV. And as shown in the previous slide down here, that webcam can pretty much see the entire room for the sake of the people on Zoom. We also have 2 tripod-mounted webcams, and we typically position them partway down both sides of the room. Let me show you the equipment roster. On the left is the minimum we think is necessary. A monitor or a TV that's large enough so that the multiple participants show up as more than little tiny postage stamps. A nice large screen is also good for showing videos, or, as we'll discuss later on, for scrolling song lyrics for sing-alongs. Now, this thing can be just a dumb monitor. It doesn't have to be a TV. But in this size class that we're talking about, 65, 70, 75 inches, a TV is less expensive than a monitor. No, folks, I do not understand that either. You need a webcam. Doesn't have to be fancy or expensive. That sits on top of the TV, as I showed you, to show the people in Zoom what the room looks like. You need a microphone or 2. I showed you on the previous picture, we use a couple of wireless microphones. We also have some wired microphones that one could also use. And of course, you need cables to connect all this stuff. And what we're talking about here, the minimum essential, about $700. You also need a laptop to run the Zoom, but I'm assuming that you've got laptops. Now, what we have is a bit more than that. We've been able to acquire extra cameras to give the folks on Zoom a more dynamic and complete picture of what's going on. So we actually have the webcam on top of the TV and 2 video cams on tripods. To get that extra stuff, we split the cost with the church so that they could offer hybrid worship services. That's why the TV is on a mobile wheeled stand. It's in the social hall for the cafe, and it's in the adjacent sanctuary, the church proper, on Sundays. In fact, the church also uses the TV and the cameras for various meetings like parish council. So yes, it is a slight disadvantage that the TVs and the cameras have to be disconnected, moved, and reconnected from one day to the next instead of being set up once and for all. But the leveraging of the financial resources of the 2 sharing organizations really outweighs the slight disadvantage. Moving the paraphernalia from one room to the other really takes only a few minutes, especially after we bought extra cabling so that the cables stay in place in each room. So you wheel the TV from into place in like the social hall, pick up and move the cameras, and you just plug everything in and reverse the process in time for Sunday morning. Okay. Talk about how to make this happen. You need a person. You need a person who can host a Zoom meeting. Most of you probably already know how to host a Zoom meeting. If you don't, Zoom itself has good online tutorials. Take less than an hour to learn how to host a Zoom meeting. Physically setting it up is not hard either. You connect the TV or the monitor directly to the laptop with whatever flavor cable they both accommodate. There's always something. And once connected, the TV becomes a duplicate of the laptop screen. Whatever's on the laptop screen is what's showing on the TV. You connect the cameras, either the webcam or if you also have the webcam and the video cams. They go directly into the laptop. You typically use USB ports. Most laptops have 3 or 4 USB ports. And if you don't have enough, you can buy a little manifold to accommodate them. That's inexpensive. You connect the microphone to the laptop. So now when you initiate the Zoom, you may not have experienced this before, but now the Zoom laptop has choices about microphones and videos, and it gives you a little menu. Which microphone do you want to use? Which video, which camera do you want to use? Which speakers do you want to use? The laptop's own speakers or the TV's speakers? The host also needs to admit folks to the Zoom meeting from the waiting room, and this slide mentions closed captioning. But what I want to talk about here is just that you only need a marginally capable person for this role. You don't need an IT expert. I'm proof of that. A single person can do all of this technical setup and running it during the course of the cafe. And that person could also serve as the facilitator, but yeah, it is easier if you have one person doing the tech and a different person acting as a facilitator. And I'll come back to that role in a bit. But I mentioned closed captions. It is a very useful, very easy feature. It's built into Zoom. There is closed captioning software out there you can buy. You don't have to buy it. Use Zoom's own built-in. In order to do it, a couple things you do have to do. Before you start a Zoom meeting, whoever holds that Zoom account, the account owner, has to go into the Zoom website. And this link here on this screen will get you to that website. And the account owner has to enable closed captions for all subsequent meetings. So that's a one-time thing that you have to do. It takes a couple minutes. Then, when you initiate the specific Zoom for that specific meeting or cafe, you will then see at the bottom of the screen along the meeting controls, you'll see a new icon that you haven't seen before. It's called CC, Live Transcript. You click on that. It gives you a menu. It says, do you want to assign someone to type? No, you don't want to do that. You don't have to do that because you just click on this that says Live Transcript, Enable Auto Transcription. You click on that and the transcripts will start showing up looking like this. Let me do it right here and now because previously, here we go. I have to call it down here because I'm sharing screen. There we are. These are my words here. You'll see that they are pretty good, not 100% accuracy, but quite good. You can also, let me get my controls back here. You can also even.
Oops, it paused. One moment, please. I don't think we can actually see the transcript.
Even change the size of those captions. Okay, now I'm going to get rid of them for the moment here because I can hide them. And the point there is that you can have the closed captions showing on the Zoom laptop and on the TV. You can show them at whatever size you want. You can hide them. But regardless of what you do from the Zoom laptop and on the TV, each individual participant chooses for themselves. So you can have the captions on in the room, and Sally and Frank, who are joining by Zoom, they find the captions distracting, they can hide them. Okay, so this is a very useful feature that we have found. Another useful feature, hello, there it goes, is a teleprompter. Software, not a physical machine, but just free software. And here's a link here down there. Free software, you can load it on. And then what you do is you get song lyrics, if that's what you want. Song lyrics, you load them into the teleprompter, and then you call it up. You share the screen with the teleprompter to facilitate a sing-along. So they will be shown in the room and to folks on Zoom. And this particular software is very easy to change the speed and even the font size on the fly. You don't have to stop everything and adjust. Just as you're going, you can speed it up or slow it down, make it larger, make it smaller. It's elegant, and I especially like the fact that it is free. The key role of the facilitator, as you guys know, is to keep the event going, but also for us to keep the folks on Zoom connected to the folks in the room. So the facilitator.
I'm sorry, if there's someone who is not muted, if they could mute
Field of view,
themselves.
or at least facing one or
whenever I try, I am halting the video. My apologies. Let me just see if I can take care of this. I saw a message that someone's hearing background noise. Okay, I don't see where that person's unmuted, but if folks could just keep themselves on mute for now, that'd be great. Thank
Another
you.
of the cameras, and then the tech person just adjusts from the Zoom controls which camera is being used. In other words, the camera that the facilitator is looking at. We also want to make sure that the facilitator is within range of one of the microphones that we place around the room. Most video cameras also have built-in microphones, so you can use that depending on the positioning of the things. In whatever conversation the facilitator leads, we want to make sure that they ensure that the folks on Zoom are involved, such as by specifically including them, in the icebreaker questions. It's not essential, but it's a nice technique for the tech person to use the Zoom spotlight feature to make sure that everyone in the room can see who on Zoom is doing the speaking. And similarly, make sure that whoever in the room is speaking can be heard by the folks on Zoom, again, by multiple microphones and switching back and forth as needed. If we do some sort of a project, we ask the artist or the musician, in this case, as you see in the picture there, to play close enough so that the folks on Zoom can see them. Or if we're doing an art project, we try to include the people on Zoom in the art project. In the past, we've sent out in advance lists of materials so that folks on Zoom can have the materials at home. And then again, you can use the spotlight feature for the artist to see and for the people on Zoom to show what they're doing. So we just think in terms of trying to keep everybody connected as much as possible. Now, there's one picture here, lower down here. This was a drumming circle in the room, and one of our friends there who was at home was drumming along. Whoops, I skipped one. I want to talk about participation. Some folks join us by Zoom simply because they're too far away. California, for example, we are in Michigan. Some others who are local join us by Zoom out of COVID caution. And we know that for others, it's just a matter of logistics. In person's better, but some days getting their loved one, bundled up and all that, and out of the house and down the road to the church is just easier to do it from home. So that's fine with us. We do ask for folks to RSVP in order to get the link. We do not publish the link. We do not want to get Zoom bombed. We ask for RSVPs for people in person to help us lay out the room and get enough supplies. We do anticipate that even when COVID is a memory, we will continue to do this Zoom. We think this is a permanent part of our offering, as long as anybody is still interested in the Zoom format as a supplement to the in-person format. Folks, I hope that this brief presentation about what we're doing down in Saline, Michigan is of interest and of help to you. Folks, anytime you want, yourselves or anybody that you know, you are welcome to join us by Zoom for our cafe. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact Lori or me by email, or go ahead and hit Lori up with questions right now. Folks, thank you so much for your attention. Take care. Bye now.
That was a wonderful recorded presentation by Jim, and so detailed and informative. And we're really happy to have Lori here with us to field questions. I'm going to check the chat, and I'm sorry, when I checked the chat during the video, it's kept stopping the video. So I see there were a couple people unmuted. There was some background sound. Apologies for that. Again, if folks could keep themselves on mute when they're not speaking, that would be great. So I would love to open it up now for any questions about Jim's presentation for Lori. And you can feel free to put questions in the chat, or if you want to just go ahead and unmute yourself, you could actually, put them in the chat or use the hand raise function, and I'll call on you, ideally. And I do see a couple notes. Very impressive, Lori and Jim. I hope I can visit your memory cafe again soon. Jim's presentation and detail were great. So I'm going to go ahead with a question and then we'll go to Janet. Thank you, Janet. I noticed, Jim talked about having a dedicated tech person, and then obviously there's the facilitator for sort of people in the room. Lori, do you have just the two of you, or do you have a third person who kind of facilitates for the folks on Zoom?
We actually have a team. We have Jim primarily does all the Zoom stuff. I do some of the facilitation, but I also like to be in attendance as a participant because I'm also a caregiver for my husband. So I don't like to be tied up just as a facilitator, because then that detracts from my caregiver role there too. So and we have another person who facilitates most of our icebreaker activities that we do each month. And then depending on what our activity or activities are each month, sometimes we have a guest artist or a guest facilitator or musician or yoga person or something like that. So we usually have at least 3 or 4 people who kind of participate as facilitating different aspects of each event.
Thank you, Lori. It's especially impressive given that your cafe is a volunteer-run cafe. It's really remarkable. So is there a person who's sort of dedicated to looking into the camera and kind of facing forward to the people on Zoom?
Basically, whoever is facilitating at that moment. So we, and it's really easy to kind of forget sometimes about the people on Zoom, but because there's always 2 or 3 of us there, we kind of, prompt each other, or the gal who facilitates the icebreakers, she'll ask a question and kind of get responses in the room, and then she will address specifically the cameras and the Zoom screen to ask if anybody on Zoom has anything to say. So a lot of times the people on Zoom are just kind of quiet and just observing. And sometimes they're very interactive, just like in the room. In the room, you also have people who are just kind of more observing and participating, but not saying a whole lot. But yeah, we try to make sure that we engage everybody equally in the room or on Zoom.
That's great. Thank you, Lori. Let's go to Janet, and then we'll take some questions from the chat. Go ahead, Janet.
Hi, everybody. I have a question. Lori, have you found there were certain types of events that are well received in person, but absolutely bombed online over Zoom?
Yeah, but we've also found the opposite to be true too. One activity that we did, the last couple of months we've been just on Zoom because of the Omicron surge in our area. So we just did Zoom, and there's an activity that we do called a treasure hunt that, we send out the instructions to people ahead of time to bring a couple of, their favorite, favorite coffee mug or a favorite item from a foreign country or handmade item, things like that. And that's easier for people to gather those things when they're in their homes. If we told them ahead of time, bring this with it. Oh, they gather, I set these 2 things aside and I forgot to bring them. This month, next week, we are actually doing a pie tasting activity. So the people who
I think Lori froze there for a moment. Let's just give her a moment. Lori, you froze. You could try turning off your video, maybe?
sorry, is that better?
Yeah, go ahead.
So we're doing I don't know where I cut off. We're doing a pie tasting next week, which local people who Zoom in, we will deliver pies to. People who are Zooming in from California, they just have to, sit at home and drool as we taste pies. But for and it depends too, if we're doing an art activity, we have offered to tell people, we'll ship you or deliver the materials that you need. You just need to give us like a week in advance. And some people have said, I don't need to do the activity, we'll just watch. So with sing-alongs and things like that, like Jim showed, we can be scrolling the song lyrics, or we can send those out to people in advance and they can sing along. Things like chair yoga or chair exercises, we've been able to do, it works well either way. Like he showed the drum circle, people at home could either be just enjoying it, or they could find, something in their home that they could use as a drum and drum along with. So there are some restrictions, but we usually try to let people know in advance what the activities are going to be. And, we usually try to do 2 activities each month so that, maybe the pie tasting they can't participate in, but we're also doing a chair yoga next week as well. So that'll work.
Great.
Balancing act. Thank you, Lori.
There are a couple of questions about audio quality. So Mary asked about sound quality and whether participants who are in the room and on Zoom are able to hear well enough. And also, if you have a musical guest artist, are there any sound quality issues to be aware of? And perhaps related to that, let's see, Caitlin asked, do you leave all online participants unmuted? So are there background noise issues if folks are unmuted? Can you speak to those issues, Lori?
Yeah, we haven't, to my knowledge, gotten any complaints about the sound quality. And I think initially the first 1 or 2 times we did it, I think we only had the one microphone. So I think the fact that we have different microphones throughout the room makes a difference. And if there's a musician, whether it's like a guitar player or the pianist, we make sure one of the microphones is close to them. If we're doing a sing-along, we do usually mute the people on home just because there's always that kind of a delay. So people in the room are singing and then there's a bit of delay, but the people at home can be singing along, but we just don't hear that. And we don't keep them muted during normal activities because we want people to speak up if they have something to say. We don't want people to be muted other than during the sing-alongs. If we do notice we haven't really noticed a lot of background noise. I think there was one time where we could really hear a lot of background noise and we just asked that one participant to mute themselves until they had something to say. And like I said, I don't think we've had any complaints about the sound quality from the participants on Zoom. Did I answer all the questions there?
I think you did. And there are Zoom settings that can help with the quality of sound if there's live music, which I've seen people do this different ways, but there is a Zoom setting called original sound that allows more of the reverberation to come through, since Zoom was created for meetings. So it defaults to kind of cutting off any quiet sound, more subtle sounds, which is good if you're having a meeting, but if you're playing the guitar or any other instrument, it can make it very choppy. So there is a setting for that if there's a live musician in the room and you want it to, the sound to carry through more true to the people on the platform. Lori, are there any times where there's really a conversation where the people on Zoom and the folks in the room are really having a conversation together? Does that work?
We haven't done too much of that yet. Next month, we're doing an activity about music and memories and asking people to contribute some of their favorite music and memories of music. And so we want that to be really interactive. That might be a real test in terms of how many, how well the people on Zoom interact with the people in the room back and forth. We haven't had too many opportunities for that to really, when we do like the icebreakers, it's just kind of, one person talking at a time and then moving on to the next person. So people on Zoom can, raise their hand or just speak up, just like people in the room. But there's not a lot of interaction. We did think about if we have a lot of Zoom participants at one point, we might use the breakout room function on Zoom so that, they can have like small group chats on Zoom, and then the people in the room can chat, and then we can all come back together. But we haven't had that need yet.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you, Lori. There's lots of comments in the chat expressing appreciation to you and Jim for really opening our eyes to a lot of the intricacy of this and what's possible. I don't see any more virtual hands raised or questions in the chat. Any last questions that folks want to ask of Lori at this point? I don't see anything. So I think we're gonna, there's just thank you so much for your clear and detailed explanations. I think we're going to close this portion and we'll move on to our other presenters who will be talking about a sequential cafe. So thank you again, Lori, and thanks to Jim and Absentia for that fantastic presentation. And it's great to have that recording. So I'm going to just move us along to the next portion here. Sorry, I've got to just kind of jet through those slides. And we'll move on to our other presenters. So we're also very fortunate to have Caitlin Mazzilli and Sarah Gilbert here from the South Shore Conservatory, which is a wonderful institution on the South Shore of Massachusetts, Greater Boston area. And they run a cafe based in Duxbury, Massachusetts, which is now offering alternating gatherings in person and virtual. So I just copied this from their webpage that shows their schedule. So they're in person at the Duxbury Senior Center Thursdays from 10 to 11 every other week, and then virtual on Zoom Thursdays in the afternoon, 1 to 2 on the opposite weeks. So I would love to invite Caitlin and Sarah to go ahead and unmute and let us know how you came to this decision and how it's going.
Hello, everybody. I'm Caitlin Mazzilli, and I am a board-certified dance movement therapist. I've been with the South Shore Conservatory since 2017, and we started offering memory cafes in 2018. We started with only in-person, but then when the pandemic hit, we switched over to a virtual format, which we kept completely virtual for a period of time. And then more recently, we've gone back to offering in-person cafes. So like Beth mentioned, we do a sequential model where we'll alternate. 1 week will be in person, and then the following week will be virtual. And we've done this purposefully to make it more accessible to more people, so a wider group and population can access our memory cafes. And personally, I have been at the in-person memory cafe, as you can see from the slide. And I'd like to introduce Sarah Gilbert, who has been offering yoga at our virtual memory cafe. So Sarah, you want to say hello?
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm Sarah Gilbert. I am a certified yoga for the special child practitioner and also a 200-hour registered yoga teacher. And I started doing virtual memory cafes. I think it's fairly new to me. I started it in the fall. And so Joanna and I lead the virtual. I actually, right before this meeting, I had to hop off the memory cafe early so that I could come over to this Percolator meeting. But we begin every class with 20 to 30 minutes of yoga consistently every week. And then Joanna does the remaining of the time. She is a licensed music therapist and so then does music with the participants for the remainder of the time. Each week, Joanna has a theme. So this week she actually had the Beatles was the theme. So she tries to get the participants to be a little more interactive, listing their favorite Beatles songs. Beatles always tends to be a hit with the participants. And yeah, they just love it. So
That's
And
great. Thank you, Sarah.
we have not had any confusion thus far. I know that was one question that had come up, whereas people are wondering which week is which. We are very clear on our flyer. We have everything listed for both cafes. We make sure that it's all in one place so that it's not confusing. We also send out emails a week in advance and then the day before the cafes to ask for RSVPs so that for the in-person, we know how many people to expect. And for the virtual, we're able to provide those individuals who need a Zoom link to have that link so they can log on. And we have had some individuals who come to both, which has been great. We've been able to talk to them about their experiences going back and forth, and they've found it to be very positive. It's great that we have different facilitators so that we're not doing the exact same thing at the virtual and then the in-person cafes. We're able to alternate, do different activities, come from a different perspective. We did all different themes, just like Sarah mentioned. We've done the Olympics, and next week we'll be doing a St. Patrick's Day themed cafe with Irish music and dancing. So that's going to be a lot of fun. And we are just so happy that participants have the option to come virtually because we have some groups that don't feel comfortable coming to the in-person cafe yet. We've made as many precautions as possible. We use social distancing, we wear masks, and we do not have like a coffee time like we used to. We used to always have coffee and refreshments at the cafe, but we've switched over to a grab and go model where we have our event and then at the end you can take some snacks or a bottle of water or juice to go so that we're not eating together and having to take off the masks. And that has been pretty successful. It's can be challenging for some adults, especially with some memory impairment, to understand like the reasoning to wear a mask and being able to keep it on, but we haven't had any problem. And something that's been very successful for our cafes is partnering with other organizations. As you can see, our in-person cafe is at the Duxbury Senior Center. So we've collaborated with the Senior Center, and they have a day program where the individuals in their day program who have some memory impairment are able to come to our cafes, and they're already there as an existing group. So they know each other and they're able to connect in that way. And we've gotten so much positive feedback for both our virtual and our in-person cafes. So far, so good. It's been really successful. We do plan to continue this sequential model where we'll continue offering both cafes We also purposely put them at different times so that if someone's not available in the morning, they can try the afternoon. So we're trying to really make it as inclusive as possible. And we're really excited to be here. So thank you so much for having us, Beth. And if there's any questions about how it's been going, we're happy to provide any answers we can.
Thank you so much, Caitlin and Sarah. That's really helpful. I know that I've been sort of thinking about that model for my own cafe, and you've anticipated some of my questions, and it makes me feel a little bit more confident in moving ahead with the planning. Would anybody like to ask Sarah or Caitlin a question? If so, please go ahead and put the question in the chat, or feel free to use the hand raising function to let me know that you'd like to ask a question, and I'll call on you. I'm just going to give folks a second to think about their questions. What songs or music do you find successful? So that's a pretty broad question. It might be interesting to hear if you find any types of musical activities that work better in person versus virtually, but you can answer that question any way that you want. We heard Beatles is a big hit. Any other comments to respond to Joel?
I use a lot of Motown music. I find that Motown is upbeat and energetic and joyful. So we use a lot of Motown. As Sarah mentioned, the Beatles are great. And I'm someone who is always asking participants, what kind of music do you enjoy listening to? And providing a different range of themes and topics, because not everyone likes the same music. So it's great to be able to have a music therapist at both of our cafes, so they're able to not only bring in recorded music, but they play instruments. We have ukulele and guitar, and we're able to take those requests. And it's been very successful to provide the lyrics. I thought that the program we saw in the last presentation, where we can highlight the different words, is great. We've been using just a share screen to put up all of the words, or providing handouts for the in-person cafes. But we have found tons of music to be successful. And as I mentioned, we'll be featuring Irish music next week in honor of St. Patrick's Day. So we're open to a wide range, and it's been very well received.
That's great. And I think it is something special about your cafes that you have such expertise in your staff who are facilitating the programs, that you have expressive arts therapists who specialize in a wide variety of modalities and disciplines, and including yoga. And it's just amazing that you can offer that kind of expertise to your participants. I'm just curious if you considered doing the simultaneous hybrid approach, and kind of why you chose what you did. Was that even on the table or not?
I think I don't think it really was, because we didn't do the Zoom virtual model prior to the pandemic. So as far as I know, we have not yet talked about doing the dual, having people on the screen and in the room at the same time. Do you know anything about that, Caitlin?
No, I don't think we've ventured into that avenue. And seeing that you do need the supplies, I think we'd have to get some more equipment in order to make that a possibility for our cafes. But judging by the presentation, it sounds like a great option that would be worth taking back to the team and considering, because it seems very successful. So it's not something that we've done for the memory cafes, but definitely something we're interested in.
Yeah, I think just another variable that I want to kind of call to attention is that your cafe is weekly, which is unusual in the network. I would say the majority of cafes are monthly. And I know that's a challenge that I've thought about, is if I did a sequential, it means some folks who let's say, don't have transportation, couldn't get there, that they would miss out for a whole month. So that's just another variable. Now I see a question from Gail. How do the participants handle the words on screen or in hand with a song sheet? Are they able to sing along? I think this might be a question for Lori. Yeah, I see two questions here, I think for Lori. One, whether you use directional microphones, and then I guess some people watching the words on screen, or I guess if you're doing the simultaneous, then you might have physical song sheets as well as the words scrolling on the screen. Lori, any comments about either of those questions?
Yeah, we do. What we do with the songs, the lyrics, we send them out in advance so that everybody has them who Zooms in. They've received them via email. So they have the option to print them out or follow along on a screen or a tablet or something. But if, some people don't have capabilities of printing something out, so they would, then they can watch them scrolling on the screen. And additionally, in the room, we'll have copies of them printed out. And we usually do a large typeface, for anybody who might have some visual impairment and can't read real small. So that again, those people will have a piece of paper in front of them, but some people are looking at the paper and some people are just looking at the huge monitor at the front of the room with the lyrics scrolling. Does that answer the question?
So I see from Gail in the chat, her question is that her folks get confused and end up not singing, just searching for the words. So I think it just underscores the importance of having the words accessible. And it sounds like you found a formula to do that, Lori, and I'm sure that others have come up with different ways. Sarah and Caitlin, do you have lyrics, and how do you handle that?
We have used some lyrics. A lot of times the participants can choose whether they'd like to have a lyric sheet or not. I think that can help if it seems like it would be something that's more confusing and they're not interested. The individuals who are looking at it can ask for the lyrics, but if it's something that is causing confusion, then it might be worth just having the sing along. I see I'm looking at Donna's comment now, offering to people to just sing la 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 and then sing the words that emerge. So it's totally optional. We do not use song sheets for every single song that we use. But I remember for the holidays, we offered lyrics for those who wanted them. So I guess with this in person, we have a little bit more flexibility of having it as a choice. And then for the virtual, we haven't had as much confusion. Sarah, have you seen any confusion with lyrics?
No, I really haven't. But most of the time we don't have the scrolling capability. Yeah, I think that sounds like an interesting program to invest in though. But we will often have the lyrics on the screen, and then the facilitator will, if the lyrics go off the screen, she's playing guitar and she'll just quickly scroll up so that people can have the option to follow along with the lyrics on the screen. Otherwise I just see a lot, people are just kind of bobbing their heads and dancing along and doing the best they can, just enjoying the time. But I haven't witnessed any real confusion or frustration around it personally.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Caitlin. So last question, and I'll just put this out there, and any of the three of you, Sarah, Caitlin, and Lori, feel free to respond, or if anybody else in the Zoom has experience with this. There were a couple questions about using directional technology, either a directional microphone or the OWL camera, which is designed to swivel to respond to a person who's speaking. So it actually has that capability built in. Is there anybody on the meeting who has experience with one of those and would like to let us know, either by unmuting or just putting a comment in the chat how it works for you. I'll just pause for a moment. I do know there's a cafe that is kind of based at a social day program that uses the OWL camera. I've heard about that and it works well for them, but from what little I've gathered, it's kind of optimized for a situation where you have sort of one person speaking at once. I think if it's an active group interaction, the OWL isn't able to, swivel so effectively. They do cost about $1,000 each. So Emily's saying she'd love to find funding for that, but it doesn't sound like there's a lot of experience with that in our network. So I want to give huge thanks again to Lori and Jim and Sarah and Caitlin for sharing your experiences with us. It's almost 3, and what I'd like to do is have us all stand up and stretch and just shake it out for a minute and give you like a couple minutes to take a breath, and then we're going to change gears and we're going to go into the last portion of the cafe, which is talking about taking stock and how the percolator can help you. So I'm going to encourage you all to stand up. I'll do it even though I'm connected by a wire here. Move your arms, wiggle your fingers, bend down, touch your toes if you like. Oh my goodness, it feels so good to get the blood flowing. Feel free if you need to, to get up for a minute. I'm going to keep going with the slides, but if you need to get yourself a drink of water or whatever you need to do, I appreciate that a 2-hour time block on Zoom is not easy. So I'm glad to see people moving. That's great. So our recent Percolator survey was about taking stock, and we're in Boston here, and some of you have been here, some of you haven't, but I think it's a perfect metaphor for how the Percolator grew. Because if you've ever been to Boston, it's very hard to find your way around. It's not a big landmass, but it's confusing. And the reason is it wasn't planned. It grew from cow paths, just turned into paved paths, and we end up with a very charming but hard to navigate city. So that's a beautiful metaphor for the Percolator. When it started, our cafe at JFNCS was the second one in Massachusetts after the Create a Better Day Cafe in Marlborough, which started way back in 2011. And at the time that I convened the first meeting of the group that became the Percolator, there were 8 organizations that were curious and thinking about maybe starting a cafe or being involved in some way. And it was just the 8 of us. And it grew to Greater Boston, and then it grew to all of Massachusetts, and then it expanded to nationwide, and eventually a handful of other countries as well. So it's been wonderful, but it also has not allowed much time to sort of be planful. So that's what this conversation's about. So I thank the 38 people who took the time to respond to the survey. The largest group was in Massachusetts, which is still pretty typical because that's where we started, but we're having great response from people elsewhere. Midwest is well represented in the survey. Let's hear it for the Midwest. The majority of the participants have been running their cafe for more than a year, but a good handful are brand new, and that's exciting too. And so the Percolator resources that I asked about in the survey are these idea exchanges, our memory cafe toolkits, which are for in-person and then virtual and hybrid, the Percolator Google group, the PSA videos, and the guest artist / activity facilitator directory and recorded webinars. And there's really kind of 3 goals that I have for right now. I want to make sure you know about these resources because some of them, a lot of people don't know what they are or how to access them. And then I'm going to show you a little bit of feedback from the survey. And then I'd like your feedback now. So it doesn't matter if you didn't have a chance to fill this out, you have a chance now to provide some input. Not only about these resources that we already have, but about what else you might want to see our network do. So I don't need to say a whole lot about the idea exchanges because you're all here. So obviously you know about them and you find them useful, except I just highlighted these quotes. I'm not going to take the time to read them, but I wanted you to see how much your sharing through these idea exchanges means to one another. You know, I got to read these wonderful quotes and I thought, I don't want to just keep this all to myself. I want you all to see, because at these Percolator idea exchanges, I just kind of facilitate the space, but you all prepare presentations. You share very generously with one another your ideas, what's worked, what hasn't, and it really matters. So, you know, these quotes are just some of from the survey, and you know, I love this. Cafes are a lifeline for attendees. We need to do all we can to continue that support, even in the most challenging times. So it's really, I think, especially helpful in these hard times we've been going through. Suggestions and guidance, helping to figure out how to navigate a virtual cafe, sharing ideas, but also finding out what the challenges are, what hasn't worked, as well as what has. Pushing the envelope, this last person talks about accessibility being something that these idea exchanges have helped this person think more deeply about. So I think a really salient question is, what topics would you like the idea exchanges to cover going forward? And in the survey, the two that really jumped out were meaningful roles for people living with dementia at the cafe. So that's what we focused on during our December 8th meeting, which we did in collaboration with Dementia Action Alliance. And I'm very happy to say that we're going to continue working with them. We are looking for some funding together with Dementia Action Alliance to implement some resources that will help memory cafes both have some greater guidance about all the different ways that you can kind of activate your guests at the cafe so that they're stepping into more of a design and leadership role, but also how you can draw on the expertise of advocates from the Dementia Action Alliance who might be able to do sort of mini presentations on living well with dementia at your cafe. There was a lot of interest in that idea at the December 8th idea exchange. So we will be following up on that. And then the second one that jumped out was outreach and attendance, which is kind of a perennial challenge for cafes because we're dealing with all the stigma and silence about dementia. And we're also trying to make people aware of what a memory cafe is, which a lot of the public just doesn't know. So it's always challenging. So we can certainly come back to that one. And I'll mention it now. If anyone here would like to do a presentation about their cafe at our June Percolator meeting, I would love to find a cafe that's really thriving in terms of outreach and attendance, where you feel like you've got a really good system for getting the word out. Maybe you've been able to reach people in a lot of different corners of your community. Maybe you've done it through partnerships or some kind of approach that you think others might benefit from, and you've got good, strong attendance. I'd love to hear from you if you're interested in presenting your cafe. So other topics that were suggested: how to evaluate your cafe and get feedback. So we did a meeting on that a few years ago. We could do it again. Finding funds to sustain your cafe, same thing. We could come back to that. Activities, always a good one. And then there was a question in a different part of the survey, but I think it fits here. How do we destigmatize memory loss? So some people don't feel comfortable coming to something called a memory cafe. What do we do about that? Should we, on the one hand, somehow soften the way we present it? Or on the flip side, should we be trying to kind of push forward in breaking that stigma and kind of challenging that stigma? So this is a really rich topic that I think we can definitely explore. I want to pause here and see if anybody else has topics that they'd like to throw into the mix. And you can feel free to put them in the chat or use the hand raise function and I'll call on you. So I'm just going to pause for a moment, give you a chance to think and to chat in any additional ideas you may have. Okay. I think the group is quiet. You know, one comment that came in on the survey is that these meetings are too long. So we have them 4 times a year and they're 2 hours each. And I do wonder if people are a little bit tired by now. So I just want to say I'm very open to that feedback. There was just one comment saying that, but I would be interested to know if others feel that way. You can always drop me a line or put it in the chat. I'm seeing some chats. Let's see. So one person Charlotte tried OWL for 2 sessions, but not going to continue with it, but not enough tech people available. Thank you, Charlotte. Erica comments about having high school service learners coming to her sessions to learn to co-facilitate. So that's another really neat approach. The term memory cafe. Oh, the term senior center has been more of a problem in Sue's experience than the term memory cafe. Okay, so another request for the network from Joel, networking for artists and facilitators for memory cafes. Thanks to those who are commenting on the length of the meeting. That's great. And Gail, thank you for your comment about the Harmony Cafe and Majestic Mountain Cafe. So these are all great ideas. Yeah, it might be good to have breaks in the meeting. And another good point Donna makes about the name Memory Cafe is that memory is only one type of symptom that can be affected when people live with dementia. So it's sort of unfortunate that the term was instituted because it's kind of misleading, because we're always trying to tell people that dementia is not just about memory loss. So that's another good reason why maybe we'll be looking ahead to a different incarnation at some point with a more inclusive name and perhaps a name that's more dynamic. So this is great to see all the conversation in the chat. Keep it coming. I'm going to move on to the toolkits. And again, I want to let you know, if you don't already, we do have free how-to guides, both for running a cafe in person and a virtual hybrid supplement. We have them both in English and Spanish. These are some of the quotes, so help me get started. But people also use it as a checklist for brainstorming with others, generating ideas for programming. So there were questions in the chat earlier about activities for an in-person cafe. There's a lot of information in the toolkits about potential activities, both for in-person and for virtual. So you might want to take a look at the toolkits. This person here shared the Spanish toolkit with her colleagues who are connected with the Spanish-speaking community in her area. Let's see. Strategies for participant retention. Great. And I also see partnering with local healthcare students. I mean, so intergenerational ideas could actually be a topic as well. So thank you for those. And the toolkit really does try to lay out the pros and cons of different approaches and why. And it's really based on a lot of experience from cafes in the network. So if you haven't taken a look at it, even if your cafe is up and running, you might find it useful. Donna, thank you for chatting in that you have a network for artists and facilitators that Joel could join. That's great. And I love all the questions that people have, or all the comments people are sharing about their cafe names. Okay, moving on to the public service announcement videos. So again, if you don't know about these, we have a 1-minute video in English, Spanish, and Portuguese. We re-recorded it at the beginning of the pandemic to include virtual cafes, and there are also some outdoor cafes pictured with people wearing masks. They are formatted for cable stations to be able to play them. Cafes are using them a lot of different ways to promote their cafe through cable and also sharing them on social media, to reach out to prospective guests and referral sources. Because again, most people have never heard of memory cafes, so they're much more likely to come if they can sort of actually see what one looks like. They can be used to educate new volunteers or to kind of give the volunteer a flavor so that they decide whether or not this is something that fits for them. And another person talked about using them as part of a pitch to donors, which I thought was a great idea. So on the Percolator webpage, you can find the YouTube links and also the video files. Sometimes cable stations prefer to have the actual files. So over on the right, you just see a little snip from that screen where you can download the actual files. And they will often your local cable can put a banner on there with information about your specific cafe. So please do use those. So this one, the Google group, I think is especially important for me to mention here because a lot of people don't know about it. What it is a way that you can post questions or resources and hear back from cafe people directly. So you don't have to send me a question, you can just post it or you can share a resource that way. At this point, there's about 350 members. What happens is that when someone joins the Percolator mailing list, I add them both to our email list and I send them an invitation to the Percolator Google group. It's up to them to decide whether or not to accept that invitation. Google groups are strange. Some people's organizations block them from accessing the Google group. Sometimes the invitation goes directly into a person's spam folder and they never see it, and then it eventually expires. So if you are not part of the Google group and you would like to be, please either drop me an email or you can just put your email address in the chat to me right now and just write Google group so I know what it's for, and I'll send you an invitation. If you think maybe your professional email address is blocking it, feel free to give me an alternative email address. I've done that with a lot of people where they couldn't get the invitation and then they just gave me their personal email and it worked fine. So I'm happy to add you if you're not part of it. And it doesn't get a ton of traffic, so it's not going to stop up your mailbox by any means. I would say there's a post maybe every other month. But the nice thing is, let's say you're working on your cafe and you have a very specific question, like, has anybody tried an owl camera? Or, we were thinking about doing a belly dancing activity and we didn't know if that would freak people out. Has anybody tried it? You can just send that question out to the Google group and you will get responses. So it is, I think it's a helpful resource, and I'm glad to see a few people wanting to join, and I'm happy to add you. And so just a couple comments from the survey. It's helped me feel our cafe is moving in the right direction. Love when people ask for info and resources. Anything I can do to help make anyone's life easier. We're all in this together. No sense reinventing the wheel. Absolutely. So I think people benefit from receiving guidance and they also benefit from giving it. And that's one of the beautiful things about our network, I think, is that opportunity to help and be helped. So now I want to check in about the Percolator Guest Artist and Activity Facilitator Directory. So this is one that you may not be aware of at all. because prior to the pandemic, this was a resource exclusively for cafes in Massachusetts. And it still is comprised mostly of folks located in Massachusetts. However, since the pandemic, most of the participants now offer virtual programs. So you could hire one of them to offer something virtually at your cafe, even though they're far away. The artists and facilitators are not vetted. So it's not like Yelp where there's a review. They are listed. And so what happens is someone contacts me and says, you know, hey, I have this skill to offer, I have this program to offer. And I send them information about memory cafes, about the network, and a link to a Google form, which they fill out, and then that adds them to the directory. So there is a little bit of a filtering process in that if they read about what cafes are doing and the network is doing, and they say, no, you know what, this isn't what I want to do, then they don't join. And that does happen occasionally. There have been people who really want to find one-on-one clients, and we clarify that in our back and forth, and they don't join. So that's just one example. Not everybody who joins the directory has experience working with people living with dementia, but they're all eager to do that. And certainly in the early years of my cafe, I had a lot of guest facilitators who didn't have prior experience, but really wanted to learn and do it, and they did a fantastic job. So in my view, that's not a precondition as long as they have that interest, and if they need to learn more, they're willing to do it, and they're going to talk with you about their questions in advance. So the link to this Google Sheet is on the Percolator webpage. You can go in there and find a facilitator. You can also refer anybody to me. If there's somebody who does programming at your cafe and you think it's wonderful and they're looking for a wider audience, feel free to connect them with me. You're welcome to give them my email address and just have them contact me, or you can do an introduction, whichever you prefer. I would say, unless they're in Massachusetts, they need to be able to do it virtually. Otherwise, it's just sort of a shot in the dark because, you know, people are located all over the place. But anybody virtual we could add. And then I will walk them through the process and they can join the directory if they wish. Now, the Google Sheet is not easy to read. And if anyone is brilliant with formatting or has an idea of how this resource could be more effective, I'm all ears. But it does work. Here's a quote: "This helpful directory has given us many great ideas for our cafe." So I also have seen that happen, that people go into the directory and scroll through and just get ideas of what are some of the things you could do at your cafe, even if they don't immediately hire somebody from the directory. Let me pause here. Any comments, questions, thoughts about this or anything else I've shared so far? You're all doing great. We're getting there. We're almost at the culmination of today's idea exchange. So the last resource that I wanted to mention are the Percolator's recorded webinars, and we archive these meetings as well. But there's a handful of webinars there which you may or may not have noticed. There's one on starting a Spanish-speaking memory cafe that we did in conjunction with the Lawrence Council on Aging here in Massachusetts, which started the first Spanish-speaking cafe in our state. There's one focused on making cafes inclusive of people living with IDD, intellectual developmental disabilities, as well as dementia. Starting a memory cafe network. A number of folks have been curious about that because they've started or wanted to start a kind of a regional branch. Creating and sustaining a memory cafe. So there's kind of a nice presentation there, which is sort of like the toolkit as a video, if you prefer that format. There's a webinar about the power of social connection, which then talks about memory cafes and another type of social engagement activity. There are a couple webinars about starting and running a virtual or hybrid memory cafe. I have a TEDx talk, which I'd love for you to watch if you're interested in that, about memory cafes and the Percolator. And then we have the Idea Exchange archives since June of 2019. And one person commented that she finds the webinars helpful for discussions with staff and student interns. So, you know, they're just sitting there, and if there's someone who you want to kind of get up to speed on what memory cafes are all about, you can always assign them to watch one of these. Couple questions I see: where can we find the presenter list? So the guest artist directory is on the Percolator webpage, and I will actually share that screen with you in a moment so you can see it. So another question in the survey was about any ideas for how we can make cafes more accessible, especially for communities with fewer services, because, you know, the whole core value here is inclusivity. That's what we're about. And we need to think about that in many ways. We need to think about access, obviously, for people living with dementia and care partners, but also people in every corner of our community. And so, you know, one person commented, the trust is not there due to past issues with providing services to underserved populations. So, you know, we live in a country with a long and deep history of racism and discrimination, and it's hard to overcome those barriers. It has to be done sort of intentionally, and it's a never-ending process, really, of learning and listening and relationship building, and really worthy to always be thinking about that. And so that's something where, you know, at the Percolator, we've tried to translate into Spanish, which is the second most common language in the country after English, but also to showcase any cafes that focus on less served populations. So we've done that at various cafes in the past, various idea exchanges. And I really hope that we can continue to do that. One person suggested, is there a way to give extra assistance to organizations such as senior centers that serve a diverse community? And I would love to. So if any of you are connected with an organization, whether it's a senior center or something else that serves a diverse community, and they're playing with the idea of a memory cafe, you know, any technical assistance that I could provide, I'd be glad to. And sometimes I'm able to connect people at different cafes that serve related populations to sort of support one another as well. If you have a cafe that serves a non-English speaking community or another community that tends to have less access and services, and you'd like to present it at a Percolator Idea Exchange, please let me know. Couple of comments came in about actively recruiting volunteers who are bilingual, in this case Spanish and Chinese, and also a comment hoping that there will be a French-speaking cafe soon. So hopefully over time we will see more and more cafes in many communities, and also outside the US. Couple Percolator Idea Exchanges ago, we had the team who run the first memory cafe in Brazil. And because they were offering it virtually, I know there are Portuguese speaking folks in Greater Boston who are attending their cafe in Sao Paulo virtually. So, you know, hopefully we will have just a more representative memory cafe network as we go forward. Any thoughts, ideas about this? Anyone want to make a comment? Okay. Any other ideas or suggestions that you have for how the Percolator can help? Some of the ideas that came in through the survey were more things that an individual cafe would do, like ideas for how to partner with other organizations. But the question is, what could we as a network do? For example, one person said look for ways to promote cafes through national or statewide networks. And this person specifically mentioned the California Caregiver Resource Centers, which I'm not familiar with. So if you have a statewide network or a national network you're aware of, and I can be helpful in some way, putting together some information about memory cafes, let me know. I'd love to do that with you. Another person has been sharing a lot of resources about fundraising. And I'm going to follow up with this person because maybe we can get a speaker to talk about how cafes can be more successful in finding grants. There may be, other models of delivering cafes. So one person commented on the idea of a cafe that would be mobile and would go to adult day programs. So if anybody's doing something like that and wants to share it, let me know. Any other ideas or thoughts in the spirit of brainstorming? Yeah, and I see a comment that it's hard to listen and think and type at the same time. So please feel free to follow up with me by email at any point. You don't have to do it now. Just looking at all the comments. Yep, any social organization. Yeah, it may be something that we could look at. I know in England, the Rotary clubs were a really big engine behind supporting memory cafes and getting them to spread. So if anybody has connections, because that's often what it comes down to, I'm happy to partner with you and help with that. And that's actually how we had a wonderful article in the Wall Street Journal last year about the importance of friendship for people living with dementia that featured memory cafes. And that article happened because one of you folks, someone in our cafe network, had seen this reporter who'd done a lot of stories that seem relevant and brought that to my attention. I reached out and this person actually responded and she wound up doing the story. So feel free to reach out to me if there's a way that we can work together in service of all of you to call attention to memory cafes more broadly. And I'm just looking at the chat to see if there are any other thoughts. So again, you can find all of the free Percolator resources on this one website. And what I'm going to do is stop sharing my slides and I'm just going to share my screen and I'm going to show you where the, I'm going to find my screen. Here we go. I'm going to show where these various items are that I've mentioned. Percolator. Okay. So here is the Percolator webpage, and here are thumbnails of the PSA videos on top. There's history of the network, some other odds and ends. You can join the email list here if you want to. There's a little description of what are memory cafes. If you're looking for something like that, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. Those sections are here as well. Here's another place you can join our email list. And then we get into the resource links. So Massachusetts directory, national directory, here is the guest artist and activity facilitator directory right here. And here's the form that an artist would fill out. And right now it says Massachusetts only, please. So I've got to change that. And then here are those downloadable files of the PSA videos and the toolkits in English and Spanish and the various webinars. Underneath that, here's the TED Talk link. Underneath that, you will find the archive of our quarterly idea exchanges. And this list is just growing, growing, growing. So that web page is going to get longer, longer, longer. So I want to just spend the last 5 minutes opening it up. I see lots of good conversation in the chat. If anybody has other feedback about how the Percolator can help you, bring it on. or simply anything else that you want to comment on. Please feel free. You can just unmute yourself if you want.
I'm Janet Barnes. I'd like to introduce myself.
Great.
You see this person sitting here in this funny looking hat? Well, as Beth, as you so kindly introduced me at the beginning, I'm in the resource directory. My company is Historical Portrayals by Lady J. So to take the mystery out of all this, what I do is I take overlooked, underappreciated women out of American history, and I bring them onto the stage by portraying them. And the way this ties into patients with dementia is that I've performed at a lot of senior living facilities, both memory care units and independent living, all kinds of places, senior centers, all kinds of places. However, when I portray particularly my Victorian ladies to a group of senior citizens, we have conversations about, for example, in one of my portrayals, The Etiquette Expert of 1890, I talk about tea etiquette. We'll talk about tea parties. Did you have tea parties with your mother or grandmother when you were young? Or my portrayal about turn of the century medicine. What did one woman talked about her mother giving her chesters, which evidently was a eucalyptus kind of poultice that her mother put on her chest. So what it does is it elicits memories, and really people come up with some really loving, warm memories about mother and father and grandmother and sisters and brothers. They go back to I guess happy times. So if you're looking for a resource, that's something you might want to take a look at, see if it might work for your particular memory cafe. It's Historical Portrayals by Lady J. Thank you for this time.
Great, thank you so much, Janet. I know that for me, one of the most inspiring and fun aspects of being involved in memory cafes is meeting people like you, the teaching artists who do so many different amazing things, and just getting so many ideas and being able to bring you to our cafes. So thank you. Anybody else who has any kind of feedback or a comment or a last announcement they'd like to share?
Hi, Beth.
Hi, Deb.
Deb Dowd Foley from Elder Services of Worcester, and we run a memory cafe at the Worcester Senior Center. And I've been with Beth since she brought it to the state. And I guess I just have been thinking about a comment someone had mentioned around using the term memory cafe. And for me, it resurrects two things. One is we want to keep people who have memory issues and their caregivers, because that's who I work with, is with the Family Caregiver Support Program, and not having just anyone come, because it's really specific to supporting the caregiver and their loved one. And the other thing is, I think when we keep it with a memory cafe, and again, it's my opinion, it is trying to take the stigma away and talk about this disease. It's a brain disease, and I've been very involved with the opioid epidemic since losing my son to a brain disease. So I feel like the more we talk about it, the more normalized it becomes, so that people understand it's everywhere. And when I talk about, losing my son to an overdose, people are like, oh, now they know somebody. And so for people who have, both my parents had Alzheimer's, and to talk about it, I understand the challenges, but I just think that keeping it to really talking about it and not keeping it under the rug or behind the door, so that even the caregivers can feel more empowered to come out. And I know there's a lot of movement, at least in this state, around the care recipient, the person with the dementia, and how do we empower them? So maybe just allowing them to know that they can talk about it and they still have a voice. So that's just my 2 cents on memory cafes, but I love the term, and I hope we can keep it for a while. Thanks.
Thank you, Deb, so much. I really appreciate your sharing your view and those reflections, and also your personal experience. Thank you for that. And I think that, one thing that we heard from advocates from Dementia Action Alliance last quarter is that many, many people, including people who themselves are living with dementia, have never heard from somebody who's talking about living well with dementia. So that can sometimes turn on a light bulb. So I think there's many, many facets of this, and this is a fuller conversation that we really need to have here. Um, and you know, it's also the case that no matter what name we use, we always have to meet people where they are. So different individuals who are participating are going to need different things, no matter what name we come up with. And I know that you are all splendid at doing that. The people who do this work have tremendous hearts and ability to listen and really tune in to people who have all different kinds of interests and needs. So that's sort of the heart and soul. So we'll keep pushing forward, and we will find more ways to talk about how to break the stigma, how to support people who are in different places. So I do see that it's 3:30, which means regretfully it's time to go because I love being with all of you. Feel free to sign off if you need to. If you want to stay for a minute or two and chat more, that's fine. I'm going to stop the recording.